Welcome to Missing Briefs, where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers, their triumphs and trials. I'm Dominic Grew, the founder and the owner of Elevate Business Coaching, a Boston-based firm that specializes in working with law firms and their lawyers to build, manage, and grow successful practices.
And I'm Bob Furlong. I'm a certified exit planner of the Bulfinch Group. I help managing partners implement strategies to attract and retain their best associates, and this creates a clear path for partners to be able to retire successfully.
Terrific. So Missing Briefs, what's it all about? Well, the purpose is really to explore and tell the compelling stories or briefs of lawyers who have experienced significant challenges and successes in the business of law. What was their gap? What were they missing? What is it that they wish they'd known? And it's our pleasure to welcome today Michael Gillis, who is the founder and one of the owners of Gillis Bikofsky, a Newton, Massachusetts-based law firm that represents consumers, individuals, entities, and companies who've been needlessly harmed personally and financially because of the negligence, recklessness, and sometimes even intentional acts of others. Michael is a seasoned trial attorney with a specialty in business and products liability. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that introduction.
Great to have you with us. Bob.
So, Michael, I've known you for a long time, but it'd be great for you to share with the audience, especially aspiring attorneys out there, when and at what point in your life did you decide to become an attorney, to take that path?
Well, I'd like to tell you that I always wanted to be an attorney, but that was not the case. I was a pre-med student in college. My father was a dentist. I passed when I was a kid. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. But then I realized that working in a 10 by 10 room the rest of my life was not something that I really wanted to do. My mother actually said you should take some graduate admissions test. So I took the LSATs, and I was accepted at Suffolk University Law School, which I had a great experience, but I did not have the funds. So instead, I took a job in New York for a reinsurance company, Gen Re, down on the corner of Wall and Water Street. While I was in the training program, I learned that I received a trustee scholarship at Suffolk, which allowed me to go to law school. I spoke to my boss, and he said, go and we'll hire you back at double the amount of money as one of our attorneys. And I went to law school, but I never ended up back in New York.
And, you have a very interesting area of the law that you focus on. What pushed you to choose that as opposed to a different concentration?
Well, I know now as an attorney that it's kind of most people who are not attorneys expect everybody to be a trial attorney, but most attorneys are transactional, business lawyers, wills and trusts, real estate. But when I got to law school, I pretty much knew from the beginning that I wanted to be a trial attorney. I worked as a student defender in the juvenile courts in the Boston Juvenile Court, defending young kids in the Boston area. I worked as an intern in the DA's office in Brookline District Court. I was blessed to have two courses with Professor Tom Lambert, who's a world-renowned tort and products liability attorney, was the dean of a law school at age 25. He was an exceptional lawyer and really got me fired up about doing trial work. I've been fairly athletic most of my life and really enjoyed competition. And trial work is basically mental competition versus physical competition. You need to thoroughly prepare, be ready for the trial like it was a game day. You do your best you could, you roll with the punches, and when things are not going your way, you find a different way to win. And if you don't win, you pick yourself up and get right back into the game at some other part of the litigation or the next trial. So those are all skills that I thought that sort of fitted me. I was a 5'6", 150-pound college athlete, so I learned early on that I had to try a lot harder than the other athletes in order to compete, and those lessons transferred over really well to trial work. So I think a lot of that to be successful was competitiveness and knowing that would have to outwork the other side, which is something that has been great. And it's not like we always win our cases, so you expect to win them all, but sometimes you don't, and you have to have the mental toughness and competitiveness to just pick yourself up after a loss and get back in there and enjoy the wins when you have them. So, but trials are more difficult than athletic competitions because you're putting a lot more at stake. In a criminal case, it could be someone's freedom. In a tort case, it could be devastating injuries to a family, someone horribly injured or financially devastated. And it leaves a real pit in your stomach if you don't know deep down inside that you did your best, and because you know how disastrous it could be to your client, either financially or without their, have them going off to jail. So it's, I think it's tougher than the physical competition, but it's exhilarating when you win, and it feels great to help people that you really like and feel have really been wronged, and you can be very proud of what you do for them.
Oh, that's great. So preparing, working really hard to win, and being resilient enough to pick yourself up when things don't go your way. That's really great words of advice.
And again, what I heard you say, Michael, was you never expected that you were going to be in the legal profession. That you never thought about it until your mother said maybe you want to do some of these graduate tests, and it's so interesting.
Yeah, and she didn't even say take the LSAT. So it could have been the GMATs, could have been the LSAT, could have been anything. But for some reason, I had known some people in the law, and it just seemed like it might be a good fit. And one of the things I like about the law is that it has versatility. I know a lot of people who are smarter than me who went to law school, and they're smarter because they didn't practice law. They get into business or some other area. So it's you can, and I took some night school courses at Suffolk where you have a lot of businessmen who are getting their law degree at night, and you could see how a law degree is so much more than just trying cases. It really sets you up for any industry, pretty much.
Yeah. So interesting. And I love, there's one line you said there where you said, trials are mental competition, different type of competition, not the physical type, but the mental competition. And that thing of competing is I can see that it lights you up when you're talking about it. The stakes are high for your clients. So it's so interesting. But I want to do a little bit of a twist. So we know how you end up being a lawyer. We know why you're practicing in the area. What you have. We know a little bit about what makes you tick. But thinking back to when you started your law firm, or kind of going out to start your own practice. Thinking back to those times, what were some of the key challenges that you faced when you took that leap?
Well, I think I was pretty lucky when I started my practice because I had a lot of I was fortunate to get great experience on somebody else's dime before I opened up my own law practice. I started out of law school with General Electric, and we did all their products liability work. So at 25 years old, I had my first trial, which was a 9-week products liability trial in Placerville, California. It was the death of a motorcyclist who plaintiff counsel believed that the bell helmet that he was wearing was defective. And at that time, GE started selling Lexan, which is a polycarbonate plastic, which they made motorcycle helmets out of. And previously, they made them out of fiberglass. So to sit second seat with local counsel from San Francisco for 5 weeks, we settled after 5 weeks on a 9-week trial, was just an incredible experience. And from there, I went to Travelers, where I defended a hazardous waste site, still resident site up in Lowell. We had about 250 people on the list. Ours was the smallest of the defendants, but when I saw the list of all the other defendants, it turned out we insured about 15 of them. So I get to work on a pretty big case there. Again, I was probably late 20s, and got a lot of experience with really, really good lawyers. So I think one of the things, to answer your question, is that the challenge when you start your own practice is, do you have enough experience that you can handle these cases if you're going to take on sizable cases? And after working for 2 insurance companies, GE's insurer and then Travelers, I realized that I liked representing the individuals. I was just more suited for that, always sort of rooting for the underdog. So we started our own firm, and then we started representing plaintiffs, and took a lot of lumps along the way, being a young lawyer and not having the experience that I really needed. But because we took on some pretty big cases back in the 90s, where we were trying tire mismatch cases. Remember the old SUVs where, they were, unfortunately, the tires were blowing out. You'd be putting a 16-inch tire on a 16.5-inch rim, and it couldn't seat the bead. And if it had a defective bead, the tire would explode. If it was someone putting a tire on there, it would blow right up into them, and had injuries of, like, the rim would come up and fracture the arms, and hit the head and cause brain injuries. And big cases, tough cases, very, very expensive to litigate, and sort of took a while to get there. But having some good products experience before I started, and then learning the hard way after I did begin, eventually got to that point where I felt that we were. Those are probably the biggest challenges. The type of work we do is contingency fee work, so it's very difficult when you're trying these cases. Because you have to put the money up front and you may go 4 or 5 years before you get paid. And so you have to be careful as to how many of those cases you take at a time.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like experience is something that was very important. You got a lot of great experience with the GE and Travelers, big cases. You have a ringside seat in terms of some of these cases, having to travel out and learn from others, some great mentors as well. Let me ask you this. So again, it's one thing when you work for a larger firm or whatever, but taking that leap when people are depending on you to be successful, your clients are depending, but your family are also depending on you as well to bring home the bacon, etc. Knowing what you now know, what would you have done differently when it came to kind of starting your own practice and building your own practice? What would you have done differently?
I'm not sure of a lot of things that I would have done differently. I was lucky in that when I did go out on my own, I was 29 years old. I was, I wasn't married. I didn't have any responsibilities. I don't know if I had a wife and kids and a mortgage, I could have done that.
Yeah.
But if I were to give advice, things I probably would have done a little bit more differently is first, it's really tough when you're starting your own firm to be really selective about the cases that you take. If it's an hourly case and you're getting paid either way, that's one thing. But when you're taking cases like we do that are on contingency, you really have to be selective because you could spend 3, 4, 5 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars and end up with nothing. I also tend to be, I think, a little bit of feel sorry for some of my clients and spend a lot more time on them than get back in fees. And Bob knows cases like that I've had, but I just feel bad for these people. I know got screwed, but it doesn't always make sense financially to assist them knowing how much time it's going to take. So I think you got to be, I should have done better with business decisions. And the second thing as a young lawyer, I wish I had paired up at that point with a mentor on bigger cases. Currently, we have some very significant products liability cases, some of which Bob's aware of, where the significant injuries, paralysis, deaths, I mean, against major auto manufacturers and national companies, very time consuming, very expensive. And even now, when I've had 40 years experience, ironically, instead of mentoring and working with somebody else in these cases when I was younger, I do them now with other firms from around the country, and I pair up with them, particularly if they've had a case with that product before, because you share the expenses, you share the time. If God forbid you lose, you're not out $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in a bunch of time. So something like that, if you're starting out, could really bankrupt your practice. And I was lucky, 14 years out of law school when I was married, and I wasn't married before I got married, and then more established. So I would tell people starting your own firm, it's great and it's easy to get sucked into it, but you really have to have a good work-life balance. I have 2 kids just out of college and 1 in college, and everybody tells you that, the time flies. So you can never recreate that time with your family. So you should always have time to get to the game or the recital, to spend time with them on the weekends. And clients are very important, but family is more important. And then lastly, which sort of came to me later in my practice, is that be charitable. The work you do for charity always comes back tenfold. It's really tough to believe when you're trying to work 60 hours a week and see your kids and do everything else. But, putting the time in for that is not only, like I said, brings back tenfold, but it's also a great example for your kids.
Well, Michael, you're a brilliant attorney, an outstanding litigator, but also a person with a big heart. I've seen that firsthand. And, Michael is very humble, doesn't always lead with the fact that he's packed about 3 million meals for people in war-torn Haiti, right? And that's outstanding. So, you probably have, because of your skill and your giving, you probably have a huge number of people that come to you. What is the best way, if anybody, watching this or any of us have a prospective client, what's the best way to connect them with you? What's the most successful way that you've seen?
We've been very fortunate in that we've never advertised.
Yeah.
All of our clients come from people who we've met before, either prior clients. We get a lot of cases from attorneys who refer us a case. We will share the fee with them, and they're very happy about that, and they get back to us. But so it's always, I think the preferential way to be introduced to a prospective client is through somebody who you know and who respects you enough to say, hey, I have this friend or I have this potential client, and I think you'd be a good fit, because we really appreciate the fact that all of our cases come almost exclusively from referrals, which means people think enough of you that they would, refer a friend or a colleague, a family member to you. So we like to hear from people. They give us a little bit of the story, and then we set up a meeting with the client directly. And having that context of where they came from certainly helps too, because you hopefully know about the person who referred the case to you, and it helps you, like I said, with more context with the potential client when you're doing the client interview.
Right. So someone that knows you, knows what your skill set is, and really kind of makes that connection, as opposed to just giving a number or mentioning you to a client. That sounds great. And what is the best contact information? So somebody who might not already have that, will you share with us your website, your URL, or are you better off on a call? Will you share this before we wrap up? Be nice to include.
Yeah, our website is gillisandbikofsky.com. That's spelled out. Gillis is Gillis, then A-N-D, and then Bikofsky, B-I-K-O-F is in Frank, S-K-Y, gillisandbikofsky.com. Our number is 617-244-4300. Our office is in Newton, but we also have an office in Nashua, New Hampshire. But if you're in New Hampshire and you want to get in touch with us, call the Newton office.
That's great. Excellent.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Michael Gillis, for spending time with us today. I learned a lot from our discussion. I take away that thing about mental competition and really fighting hard for your clients. So thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
You've been listening to Missing Briefs, where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers, their triumphs and their trials. If you've got an interesting story to tell about your own triumphs and trials of owning your firm, or perhaps you know somebody else that does, please get in touch with us. I'm Dominic Grew.
And I'm Bob Furlong.
And until we meet again,
have a great day.